Welcome back to Boring Guy DIY. Today we're going to be doing a tool demonstration of a circular saw, or as some call them, a skill saw. This is one of the most versatile tools in the shop. It is a must-have whether you're an aspiring woodworker or a professional. Let's get to it. Circular saws come in two different styles: corded and battery operated. In general, corded tools have more torque and an indefinite runtime, where their battery-operated cousins have a shorter runtime but offer a lot more convenience, especially at a work site or a place where power is not available. The components of a circular saw are as follows: an upper and lower blade guard assembly to protect the user, a shoe or base plate to guide the saw along the work surface. On the front of the saw is a bevel adjustment screw. This allows you to control the angle of the blade in relation to the work surface. In the middle of the saw is a forward grip and rear grip. This allows you to maintain firm control over the saw during operation. In the middle of the grip is a trigger assembly. The trigger is what applies power to the blade. Most modern saws and battery-operated saws have a safety switch that won't allow the trigger to be depressed until it's engaged. And finally, on the back of the saw is the depth adjustment lever. This controls the depth of cut. Choosing the right blade for your application is incredibly important to achieve a clean and safe cut. In general, blades that have fewer teeth will cut more quickly, but they will provide a rougher finish. Blades that have fewer teeth are great for framing, cutting down dimensional lumber, or tasks where you want a fast cut but don't care as much about the finish. The opposite can be said for a blade that has more teeth. You'll get a much finer finish. These are great for hardwoods or plywood cutting, as you typically will need a really nice smooth cut on those surfaces. Luckily, blade manufacturers make it really easy for us to match the correct blade to our application. Printed on the front will be the size, the tooth count, and the application the blade was designed for. Changing the blade on a circular saw is a relatively easy task. First, disconnect all power from your tool, whether that be the battery pack or the plug from the wall. On most modern saws, an arbor lock will either be located on the front or the back of the blade guard. What this does is it locks the rotation of the bolt so you can remove the blade. To do this, simply press in on the arbor lock and manually spin the blade until you feel it lock in place. Most saws will come with a wrench specifically designed for your arbor bolt. In this case, I'm just going to use an adjustable. Place the wrench on the arbor and turn clockwise to remove the bolt. Remove the arbor washer. Move the upper guard into the open position and pop the blade off. Insert the new blade Typically, the writing on the blade will be facing out or towards you from the saw. Then you just reinstall, reversing the process from before, turning counterclockwise. Just remember to keep your finger on that arbor lock. Snug it down, and you're good to go. A quick tip to ensure that you install the blade correctly is the teeth should be facing towards the front of the tool. Now that we have selected the correct blade for our application and installed it in the circular saw, it's time to make a cut. Today I'm going to be demonstrating a cut on a 2x3 piece of material. But keep in mind, these principles apply to any material being cut with a circular saw. The first thing we consider is the depth of the blade in relation to the thickness of the material. For safety reasons, we only want the bottom of the blade to extend a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch below the bottom of the material. Now that the saw is set up, stock placement is another thing to consider. We never want to cut between two structures or sawhorses. This will cause pinching of the blade, which will cause serious kickback to the saw and potential injury. I'll demonstrate here with a saw blade in the 2x3 piece of stock. When cutting between two structures or two sawhorses, the stock will pinch the blade, causing it to get stuck in the material, which will then cause a kickback to the user. I'll exaggerate that a little bit here. So one thing to keep in mind is that anytime you're trying to remove material, you want the material being removed to be on the outside of the sawhorse, never in the middle. And I'll demonstrate what that looks like here. When cutting on the outside of the sawhorse leg, it allows the material to fall away, leaving a large relief for the saw blade to travel through. Now we're ready to make the cut. Ensure your workpiece is on a stable surface. A pair of sawhorses or a workbench keep you at a comfortable height to make the cut. You want to avoid any positions that makes you reach for the material. That can cause serious injury. There are two ways we can hold this board down to our sawhorses. We can use our non-dominant hand, or we can use a clamp to allow for two-handed operation of the saw. If using your hand, just ensure that there's enough space in between the saw blade and your hand so that if any kickback occurs, your hand is free and clear of the blade. On the front of the shoe, or the base plate, there's a 0 degree and 45 degree indicator marking. The 0 degree notch is what will align with our line on the board when we're cutting 90 degrees or perpendicular to the board. When cutting at a 45 degree angle, we'll use the 45 degree notch to align with the blade line. Now we're ready to make the cut. In some instances, we need to make a cut that's not through the total thickness or length of a board. This is called a plunge cut. Keep in mind that this is an advanced technique. If you're a beginner to circular saws, I would avoid making this cut until you have more confidence with the tool. To make this cut, you need to manually hold open the lower blade guard. Place the front of the shoe on the material with the blade hovering above the material about 1/8 to 1/2 of an inch. When ready, ensure that your fingers are well clear of the blade. Engage the saw and slowly lower it into your material. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hopefully some of those tips and pointers will help you when using a circular saw in the future. Join us next time at Boring Guy DIY.